The Medal of Honor is the highest military decoration the United States can bestow. It's presented by the President, usually at the White House, almost always with full media coverage. In 1968, Captain William McGonigal received the Medal of Honor for his command of the USS Liberty, a Navy intelligence ship attacked by Israeli forces in international waters during the Six-Day War. But McGonigal didn't get his medal at the White House. The ceremony was held quietly at the Washington Navy Yard. No president, no cameras, no press. That quiet ceremony tells you more about the USS Liberty incident than any official report ever has. Because what happened to the USS Liberty on June 8, 1967, isn't in dispute. The basic facts are a matter of record. What's been fought over for nearly 60 years, bitterly by the survivors themselves, is whether the Israeli attack was an accident of war or something deliberately concealed, and whether the United States government chose to bury the truth to protect an alliance. The central question is deceptively simple. Did Israeli forces knowingly attack an American naval vessel, killing 34 sailors and wounding 171? And if they did, why has the U.S. government spent 6 decades refusing to conduct a full congressional investigation? Israel says it was tragic misidentification. The surviving crew says otherwise. So do a Secretary of State, a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and at least one NSA official who was monitoring communications in real time. The evidence sits on the table. No one in authority has ever been willing to pick it up. The official account goes like this. On June 8, 1967, the fourth day of the Six-Day War, the USS Liberty was operating in international waters, roughly 14 miles off the Sinai Peninsula. Its mission was signals intelligence. At approximately 2 p.m. local time, Israeli Air Force jets attacked the Liberty with rockets, napalm, and cannon fire. Shortly after, 3 Israeli Navy torpedo boats joined the assault. One torpedo struck the hull, blowing a 40-foot hole in the starboard side. The attack lasted approximately 75 minutes. Israel's explanation came within hours. They had mistaken the Liberty for the El Qusair, an Egyptian military transport. Israeli commanders said the ship was identified as hostile based on its proximity to the combat zone and that nationality markings were not visible. Israel apologized. The United States accepted the apology. A Navy court of inquiry, convened days after the attack and completed within roughly a week, concluded there was insufficient evidence to prove intent. Case closed, officially. And the official narrative isn't without logic. War zones are chaotic. The Six-Day War was moving at extraordinary speed. Israeli forces fought on multiple fronts simultaneously. Military misidentification happens. The United States military itself has hit Allied forces in combat. Except the crew of the Liberty never accepted that explanation. Not in 1967, not now. Start with the vessel identification problem. The El Qusair, the vessel Israel claimed the Liberty was confused for, displaced roughly 2,600 tons. The Liberty displaced over 10,000 tons, more than 4 times the size. Completely different hull shape, different superstructure. The Liberty was bristling with antenna arrays, an unmistakable profile for an intelligence vessel, and it was flying a large American flag. The weather matters here. June 8, 1967 was a clear day, calm seas, visibility was exceptional. Israeli reconnaissance aircraft had been circling the Liberty for hours before the attack. Crew members counted at least 8 flyovers beginning that morning. Some of those aircraft flew low and slow enough, survivors say, that they could see the pilots. Low enough that the hull markings GTR-5, painted in letters roughly 10 feet tall, would have been impossible to miss. Then there's the duration, 75 minutes. Think about that. a case of mistaken identity in clear weather against a ship 4 times the size of the vessel it was supposedly confused with, flying the American flag that lasted over an hour. The initial air assault used napalm, a weapon designed to kill exposed personnel. When the torpedo boats arrived, crew members attempted to deploy life rafts. Those rafts were machine-gunned in the water. Under international law, firing on life rafts constitutes a war crime, even against an enemy vessel. Right, and then the rescue that didn't happen. When the Liberty transmitted its distress signal, the aircraft carrier USS Saratoga, operating in the Mediterranean, launched fighter jets. Twice, those jets were recalled before reaching the ship, recalled on orders from Washington. The man who confirmed this publicly was Admiral Thomas Maurer, who went on to become chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Maurer didn't just confirm the recall. He spent the remaining years of his life insisting the Israeli attack on the USS Liberty was deliberate and that the American government covered it up. So the question changes shape. If the attack was deliberate, and that's still an if, though an increasingly narrow one, then why would Israel attack an American ship? 2 theories have circulated among military officials and researchers for decades. The first centers on the Liberty's intelligence capability. By 1967, the ship's equipment could intercept virtually any communication in the theater of operations. If Israeli forces were planning the invasion of the Golan Heights, launched the very next day, they may not have wanted the United States listening. Washington had pressured Israel to accept ceasefires with Egypt and Jordan. Evidence that Israel planned further territorial expansion could have triggered serious diplomatic consequences. The second theory is darker and more speculative. In subsequent years, reports emerged, later corroborated by Israeli journalists and historians, that Israeli forces had executed Egyptian prisoners of war in the Sinai near El Arish. If the Liberty intercepted communications related to those killings, the international fallout would have been severe. This theory has less documentary support than the first, but it has been raised by credible military analysts, not fringe voices. Now, the investigation, or the absence of one. The Navy Court of Inquiry was given approximately a week to examine an attack that killed 34 American servicemen. Crew members have testified, repeatedly, publicly, for decades, that they were ordered not to discuss the incident, under threat of court-martial or imprisonment. Captain Ward Boston, the Navy attorney who served as senior counsel to the Court of Inquiry, signed a sworn declaration in 2004 stating that the inquiry's conclusions were predetermined. He said that President Johnson and Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara ordered the investigation to conclude the attack was accidental, regardless of the evidence. Boston waited until he was in his 80s to come forward. He said he could no longer live with it. Dean Rusk, who served as Secretary of State under Johnson, stated publicly that he was never satisfied with Israel's explanation. He described the sustained nature of the attack, the repeated strafing runs, the torpedo, the machine gunning of life rafts, as inconsistent with any plausible accident. That's not a conspiracy theorist, that's the sitting Secretary of State. In 2003, an independent commission chaired by Admiral Maurer, joined by a former U.S. ambassador and several retired military officials, formally concluded that the Israeli attack on the USS Liberty was deliberate. They further concluded that the U.S. government had covered up the facts to protect the U.S.-Israeli relationship. The commission had no subpoena power. It received no official cooperation from any government agency. Also in 2003, the NSA declassified portions of its records related to the Liberty. Among those documents were references to intercepted Israeli communications during the attack. A former NSA deputy director, Oliver Kirby, stated publicly in 2007 that he had read transcripts showing Israeli forces identified the ship as American before the assault. The full scope of NSA intercepts from that day has never been released. Portions remain classified in May 2026, nearly 60 years after 34 American sailors died. So where does the evidence actually land? The official mistaken identity narrative has serious problems. The size disparity between the Liberty and the El Qusair was enormous. The weather was clear. Israeli aircraft orbited the ship for hours beforehand. The attack lasted 75 minutes. Life rafts were fired upon. Rescue aircraft were recalled from Washington. The investigation was completed in a week, and its lead counsel later swore under oath that the conclusions were dictated before the evidence was reviewed. On the other side, defenders of the official account point to the genuine fog of war, the fact that Israel did apologize and paid millions in compensation, and that multiple investigations on both sides reached the same finding, and this deserves acknowledgement. No single unambiguous document has surfaced definitively proving that senior Israeli leaders ordered an attack on a vessel they knew to be American. The evidence is substantial. Collectively, it's powerful. But in the strictest evidentiary sense, it remains circumstantial. What isn't circumstantial is this. The United States Congress has never held a full investigation into the attack on the USS Liberty. No committee has examined the classified intercepts. No hearing has taken sworn testimony from survivors. No subpoena has compelled the release of still classified NSA materials. 60 years, 34 dead Americans, and no formal congressional inquiry. The crew asked, over and over. The answer was always silence. That refusal doesn't prove the attack was intentional, but it proves that someone decided the truth about the USS Liberty was less important than the relationship it might disturb. 34 men died that afternoon. 171 more carried wounds for the rest of their lives, and the survivors spent decades being told not to talk about it. Captain McGonigal received his Medal of Honor at the Navy Yard, behind closed doors, as though what he endured was something to be hidden rather than honored. The question was never only what Israel did on June 8, 1967. The question that remains open, that no one in power has ever been willing to answer, is what America chose to bury and why. Subscribe for more. We release new videos every week.